Welcome back to Hardball. A focal point of the George Zimmerman trial so far has been Rachel Jeantel, a friend of Trayvon Martin's who's been described as the prosecution's key witness. She was on the phone with him just before he was killed. Defense attorney Don West spent hours over the course of 2 days trying to discredit Jeantel, and while he did succeed in poking holes in some aspects of her story, such as whether she told an attorney for the Martin family that she heard Trayvon Martin yell, get off during the confrontation, the core of what she said all along has remained consistent, that on the night of his death, Trayvon was being followed by a man who turned out to be George Zimmerman. Still, a lot of the attention on Jeantel has had to do with her demeanor, her diction, and the slang she used. And that has raised some tough questions about the role race and culture will play in how the jury responds. And for more on that, we're still joined by our panel of experts, Seema Iyer, Joseph Haynes Davis, Kendall Coffey, and Dana Swickle. And I'll start with you on that, Seema, because this did sort of create a lot of buzz on social media. There was a lot of conversation about the way Rachel Jeantel sounded. How important is that going to be in this case? Because forgetting all the social media talk, the jury has to evaluate her too.
Race, culture, politics always come into play when picking a jury and when presenting your witnesses. What disturbs me is that there's so much negative attention around this young lady, and we are not giving these jurors enough credit, because the conversation, at least on social media, is this divide, this lack of connection between those jurors and that young lady. Why do we assume that just a bunch of white people can't connect with Rachel Jeantel? Why are we thinking so little? Her demeanor is arguably good for the prosecution, bad for the defense, or vice versa. Her demeanor is her. She was authentic, she was honest, and just because you tell a few lies outside the courtroom, like we do every single day, doesn't mean that you're not being honest inside the courtroom. I don't think any of us in good conscience can say that that young lady was not presenting herself honestly.
But Kendall, at the same time, now she did stick to the core of her story, which was that it was Trayvon Martin who was being followed, that he was not the person who confronted George Zimmerman. That part holds. But is it problematic that the way she comes across could simply cause whatever she said to be rejected by the jury? And was it a mistake, therefore, for the prosecution not to try to get more ethnic balance on that jury during the voir dire?
Well, I think the prosecution got the best jury they could under the circumstances. Jury selection is not just a game of guesswork; it's a game of chance. And the folks come through. You do the best you can. But here's what's different about a murder trial: this is not a jury that's just going to shut off because there's a key witness that's maybe different than most of the folks that they know. I think this jury was working very hard and very attentively to get to the bottom of what she was saying. They know how important this is. And as you noted, the essential elements of her testimony stayed together and rang true. I think where this jury is right now after the first week is they're probably uncertain about a lot of things. They may not be sure what to really make of Rachel Jeantel, but they believe that Trayvon Martin was followed, was pursued by Zimmerman, and that whatever else happened after that came about because George Zimmerman ignored a dispatcher and went looking for this guy.
Now, because of the focus on Jeantel, I want to play just a little bit of sound from it. So let's take a look at this exchange with the defense attorney.
Of course, you don't know if he was telling you the truth or not.
Why you need to lie about that, sir?
Well, maybe if he decided to assault George Zimmerman, he didn't want you to know about it.
That's real retarded, sir. That's real retarded to do that, sir.
Now, Dana, there were some people who criticized Don West for being really tough on Rachel Jeantel in the way that he questioned her. How do you decide as a defense attorney how tough to go, given the age of the person that's on the witness stand and given the way that you as the attorney as well as the person on the stand has to come across?
I think as a defense attorney, as it relates to each and every witness, you start off with a game plan. You start off with, I'm going to go this way, I'm going to not be difficult, I'm going to be difficult. If they give me a hard time, I'm going to try to keep my cool. But we are talking about a murder trial here. We do have a man's life on the line. And I think what really went on is, I think he intended to start off being not necessarily nice, because that's not his job. And you know what? It is his job to be somewhat tough on her, and it is his job to try to catch her in lies and make her probably make mistakes on the jury stand. And you know what? Maybe a part of his job is to get the jury to dislike her. So I think what happens is, as you're questioning a witness, depending upon how it's going, I think that's when you do your game plan and or you manipulate or you maneuver along the way. I don't think he was too hard on her. I think he did what he needed to do. I think he tried his best. And, you know, with this particular witness, you either love her or you hate her. You either think that she was authentic or you thought that she was rude. But it just depends on each and every juror, and you'd be surprised what the jurors are probably thinking. We all think we know what they're thinking, but I guarantee you they're thinking other things.
And that's a really good point, Joseph, because there really were polarized reactions to Rachel Jeantel. There were some people who thought, look, she was really authentic. She was being herself. She's not a native English speaker. Her first language, I believe, was Creole, and she also speaks Spanish. So English was sort of the third language she learned. She's not sophisticated, but she certainly wasn't dumb, because she was listening to what she was being asked and sticking to her story. But is race really the elephant in the room in the way that people perceive this young woman?
Well, race is indeed immutable, but you have to remember also the judge, Judge Nelson, Deborah Nelson, who is just an outstanding judge in the 18th Judicial Circuit, Seminole County, issued an order that race cannot be used in this trial in terms of using it to, quote unquote, talk about the profiling effect. Now, with that being said, we don't know what's going on in the jury's mind. Again, we are not psychologists, psychiatrists, and so forth. And to not give credit to folks who are sworn to carry out their duties as jurors, I sometimes have a problem with that, because I still believe in the individual citizen of this country to do their sworn duty, to look at the evidence solely, what is admitted solely, and that is it.
Well, and see, not to have you play social critic here, but I mean, this has actually gone beyond the jury. The jury is sequestered. They're not seeing sort of all of the other stuff that's going on.
Sure.
But on social media, you had, you know, Olympic runner Lolo Jones come out and tweet
I read that,
you know, that she's like Medea, who is the Tyler Perry character, that he dresses in drag. I mean, you've had some really insulting things said about her as a person.
Right, some harsh criticism. And now, can we please understand why Rachel Jeantel spends so much time hiding from this case? Look at what it's done to her. For any of us to be in the spectacle, not just of the nation, the world is actually watching this case. And look at what her life at this point is irreparable. There's nothing that she can do to get over the stigma of what this case has done to her. So now we should forgive so much of all of the inconsistencies at this point that the defense is trying to bring out.
And Kendall,
I just want to jump back in for one thing that I was not able to say, Joy. The fact of the matter is, all of those critics, find any of those critics who are able to say and set forth that I speak 3 languages. I have spoken 3 languages since a child. I think I speak 3 languages fluently. I mean, you know, you can act like I'm great because I speak the King's language and have that air about me, but demonstrate that you are not bilingual, trilingual in this environment. And I think that's representative of the multicultural environment that South Florida and Miami presents to the world in terms of those of African descent, because you have African Haitians, Afro-Cubans, Afro-Venezuelans, Afro-Jamaicans, Afro-Bahamians, Afro-Hondurans. It is a cultural melting pot that is actually beautiful, and it adds to the diversity and beautiful of this great, the beauty, I should say, of this great nation. And that should be embraced.
Okay, we're going to have more on the Zimmerman trial in a moment with our panel. This is Hardball, the place for politics.